What is up, guys? I'm PhantomWalrus, and today we're here to answer one question. Which is better to use for Halo the Master Chief Collection on PC, Halo Reach? Should you use a controller, just like all the other Halos out there, or do you stick with mouse and keyboard? Is that the way of the future for Halo? We're going to answer that question and more today. We're going to analyze information that I've gathered through playing the game over the past couple weeks. We'll figure out some pros and cons of both controller and mouse and keyboard, and then we'll reach a verdict. We'll decide which is better for you to use to improve your Halo skills. By the way, real quick, I do stream Halo the Master Chief Collection on PC over on my Twitch channel. I'll put a link down in the description box below. Feel free to check it out and give us a follow. And without further ado, let's get started. So guys, I wanted to start off by taking a look at some mouse and keyboard gameplay for Halo Reach, the Master Chief Collection, of one of my games from the other day. And wanted to start with pointing out some major differences between Halo and other first-person shooter games out there, such as Call of Duty and Battlefield. One of the main big differences, obviously, is shields. In Halo, each player has shields. It takes 5 DMR headshots in Halo Reach to get a kill, which that means, in simple terms, it takes a lot of precision to get kills. It's not like Call of Duty where you run around the corner and take out a guy in less than half a second by just flicking and clicking. So that is one of the major differences. And another major difference between Halo and other games is the fact that your player himself is much more floaty. And what I mean by that is when they jump up and down, you have a very high jump. You're able to float a long ways, and not a whole lot of other games, shooter games especially, are not like that. That sets Halo apart, makes it so you have to think about what you're doing. More tactics, more strategy has to come into play depending on how you decide to jump and how you decide to move and go for those headshots. So there seems to be a mixed opinion out there on what is better to use, either mouse and keyboard for Halo Reach or controller. And a couple of factors play into that to answer that question. And we can also answer the question as not just from a Halo perspective, but in any FPS game. And of course, controller has things like aim assist, you get more precision with mouse and keyboard, more on that in just a minute. But of course, personal preference also plays into it. So now I want to get to a point where we start sharing the pros and cons of mouse and keyboard. So let's start with the pros first. The first pro on our list is precision. Using a mouse and keyboard allows you to be much more precise with your shots, especially at longer range. And like we discussed, since it takes more shots to kill an enemy than a typical FPS game, the ability to be precise can be a huge advantage, especially with the DMR. Another pro of the mouse and keyboard over controller is the elite customization that it offers. For example, do you want your beatdown button to be on your keyboard side, either the E or the Q, or do you want it on one of your mouse buttons for quick access? Or do you want your grenades on one of the mouse buttons and possibly your sprint on the mouse? Or it's virtually endless combinations that you can go with. Just like if you're a Fortnite pro, you like mashing buttons on the keyboard for different abilities, then that's what you go with on Halo. Are you a guy who likes to have all their major buttons on the mouse and the thumb buttons or the scroll wheel? You have that option, and that gives you the ability to customize your playstyle to your liking. But the biggest advantage by far of the mouse and keyboard, in my opinion, is the sniper rifle. Sniping was so easy with the mouse, especially no scopes. I loved having great control over those long-range shots, and there was even times where it felt like I didn't even need to scope in at long range. And even when I did scope in, it was still really fun to have that huge amount of control over the snipe. Like right here, where I just snipe the guy up top without even scoping in, you feel that confident with the mouse. It makes it very simple. If you have any sort of experience with PC gaming, and you probably do since you're playing Halo on PC, you'll probably find that no-scoping feels very natural and easy to do, which is the complete opposite of controller. Definitely a lot more fun with the mouse as well. I consistently got more kills using the mouse than I did on controller, and you just gotta trust me. When you try it for yourself, you'll see what I mean. The mouse is just so much easier and just more fun than controller for sniping. Alright, so we know why mouse and keyboard is good to use in Halo. It's great for sniping, it's great for precision. But what about the bad side of using a mouse and keyboard on a game like Halo? There's a couple negative things that I wanted to bring up to make you aware of, just things that I've noticed over the past couple weeks of why mouse and keyboard might be detrimental to your Halo game. First on the list is no aim assist, which obviously is kind of a given. All controllers for PC console, they all have aim assist. It helps out a lot in shooters. We'll talk more about that in just a minute when we get to the controller side of Halo. Next up on the list is I often found that getting the final headshot after breaking an opponent's shields with a DMR was sometimes difficult, and the mouse would kind of go all over the place. And I knew if I had a controller that it would have been an easy shot. And I also found that sometimes up close, I would have a difficult time hitting the enemy as there was a lot of wild movements, and it just sometimes felt awkward with the mouse to where I knew, man, if I had a controller, that would have been so easy. Anyway, here's your main takeaway. I felt that mouse and keyboard in close quarters combat, up close and personal with the beatdowns and everything, often felt pretty clunky and hard to maneuver. It feels much smoother on controller when you're fighting close quarters. Maybe that's because that's how Halo was played for about the past 15 years, right? For me, it was consistently smoother and easier to handle with a controller when you're up close and personal fighting the bad guys. The last disadvantage that I wanted to point out for mouse and keyboard is it's not a comfortable way to sit. Playing games with a mouse and keyboard is a lot like having a desk job. It's just not a comfortable position to sit in. We'd much rather, as gamers, right? We'd much rather just lean back and just turn like this and just, take a nap. But you can't do that with mouse and keyboard. You gotta stay focused. It starts hurting your shoulders, and you get what I'm saying, right? It's just not comfortable. So let's take a look at this controller gameplay on a Team Slayer DMR game that I played just the other day. You'll notice the movements are often a little more jerky, which is just, the nature of controller, right? You can't help it. Aim assist does play a huge role in this. In fact, you'll see a lot of pro players prefer controller over mouse and keyboard. Guys like Karma and Formal, who are Call of Duty pros, prefer controller, and they absolutely dominate with it, with good reason. And of course, most people grew up using controllers on console way back when. Not everybody played on mouse and keyboard. That's more of a newer trend. Of course, FPS games, the history has been on controller. So that's why you see a lot of people, they'll prefer controller over mouse and keyboard. So of course, one of the major pros of using a controller is aim assist. As we'll see right here, we're up close and personal in close quarters combat. Aim assist easily lets me get the headshots for the kill. Mouse and keyboard would have been much more work. Another advantage of using the controller is it's just much more comfortable than using a mouse and keyboard. Gamers usually want to sit back and relax when they're playing games, maybe with their feet up, a nice Corona. The last thing we want to do is sit at attention with good posture. Oh, my back! Another good thing about using a controller is a lot of them can be customized for a more personal feel. The Pro Controller with paddles and Design Lab from Microsoft are just a couple of the options you have for controller customization. There's a couple disadvantages to using a controller, and one obviously is you're going to have less precision with your aim. And let's face it, there's something just a little more satisfying about getting those final headshots with the mouse and keyboard, because you knew it took just a little bit more precision by you than it does on controller. Another major disadvantage of using a controller is no-scoping with a sniper rifle is very difficult and awkward. So you probably noticed with the controller, the movements were much more jerking back and forth, whereas with the mouse and keyboard, movements were much smoother and easier to handle, and man, did it feel good. Alright, what's the verdict? What should you be using to improve your Halo skills the most? Personally, I suggest consider using both for certain circumstances. The great thing about Master Chief Collection on PC is you can switch between keyboard, mouse, and controller anytime you want to. Personally, I leave the controller plugged in and switch in the middle of the game if I feel like I need to. For the most part, I'll use the mouse and keyboard for sniping, but when I'm getting into gunfights up close and personal, I had a lot more success using the controller because of the aim assist. It's definitely very helpful in close quarters combat. So in the end, I really enjoy using mouse and keyboard and controller. The one you end up deciding to use depends a lot on your personal preference and play style. But for me, I had the most success using a controller when charging the enemy or in close quarters combat, and was better with a mouse and keyboard for sniping and longer range shots for more precision. So guys, be sure to let me know down in the comments below whether you prefer using mouse and keyboard or controller for shooting games, not just Halo, but any shooter game. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe down below, and as always, more great content coming soon.